My Childhood.
All right, thank you for listening to Ruin My Childhood, the podcast where we decide if some things are better off left in the past. I'm Mike.
And I'm Kat.
And today we're going to be talking about something very special. What are we talking about today, Katrina?
Is this special?
Yes.
What do we call this special?
I'd call it special.
It's the Rocketeer.
The Rocketeer was incredibly special to me as a kid. I had this puzzle. So this movie came out when I was like 3. And at first I got a puzzle for it. And it was like one of those little kid puzzles that are for like 3-4-year-olds that aren't super complicated. They're on like the cardboard like backing. And I used to do that puzzle every single day. And then when I got a little older, I think I was like 4 or 5, my mom finally got the movie for me. And I watched this movie all the time. I really wanted to be the Rocketeer when I was younger. I had like an action figure.
Hold on. I find it interesting that you make the distinction that this puzzle had a cardboard backing, seeing as 99.9% of puzzles have a cardboard backing.
No, I mean like one of the ones that actually has like a board that you put it on for like the little kid ones.
Oh, like a particle board backing.
Yeah, like one of those ones that kind of has like the
right.
picture goes, it was, you know, a little kid puzzle, the ones that are meant for younger kids, but I loved the character so much. It was like,
Is this a little kid movie?
No, it's a Disney movie.
It's a little odd.
But I just remember,
don't things blow up? Like, people die in this, right?
Oh, I'm sure they do. But it's one of those things where you look at superhero movies today, like Spider-Man, Batman, if you go down the little kid toy aisle, they have little kid versions of the same characters. So I think it was one of those things where they just were also marketing it towards kids for the action figures and stuff like that. But I played with the toys before I saw the movie, and then when I saw the movie, I loved it. So I'm really excited to go back and watch it again. What do you remember about the movie?
Nothing.
Have you seen it before?
I have definitely seen it. I vaguely remember the character, mainly because of his goofy helmet.
The helmet's rad.
It looks like a grasshopper.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I remember.
You don't remember... One of your favorite actors is in this movie.
Who?
Timothy Dalton.
Oh, I love Timothy
Dalton. I know
Dalton.
you do. The only thing plot-wise that I really remember is he gets a jetpack and fights, I think, Nazis.
Does Timothy Dalton talk in that sexy voice?
I mean, every voice he does is sexy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's sexy, and I think he plays like an actor, and like I think that this takes place in like the 1930s or early 1940s.
And by his sexy voice, I specifically mean the one he takes on when he's jogging. He says, "I'm a slasher."
I'm a slasher. Slasher of prices.
We should watch Hot Fuzz.
Oh, Hot Fuzz is great.
Can we watch Hot Fuzz instead?
I mean, we can watch that in addition to.
I'll take it.
All right. So let's get to what our fans of the movie said, or fans of the podcast said about this movie.
We have fans?
We have a few. Do you have any?
No.
You don't have a single one?
90% sure I do not.
Okay, I've got a couple. Okay. So, Dustin Cantrell said, to answer your question, what do you remember from The Rocketeer? He said 2 things. Jennifer Connelly's boobs.
Oh. Wow. Thanks, Dustin.
Well, Dustin's a friend of the show. He was one of the hosts of Remake Rewind. He's a little bit older than us. He's going to be 40 pretty soon, or close to. So he was
disgusting.
Like 10, 11 when this movie came out. So he was at a interesting age.
An interesting age.
And young Jennifer Connelly was very cute.
She's cute in Labyrinth.
Yeah, she's super cute. So I get it.
Does she have breasts, though?
Yes, she does, actually. They're pretty great.
Because when I think about them, they're just small.
No, they're pretty great.
But I guess more than a handful's a waist, right? So.
And on our child-friendly podcast.
Boobs are child-friendly.
Oh, that's true.
Boobs are made for kids.
They're nourishing.
Anyway.
They're comforting. So the last one that I have is I've got one from Orlando. He said that he loved the scene where the guy got on the rocket and pushed a car.
What?
I don't really remember that scene, but I'm going to watch it and see it.
Doesn't some stuff go down at Griffith Observatory? That might be the only thing I remember because
I think you're
my
right.
family is super into astronomy. So whenever we visited LA, we'd go to the observatory.
I think the climax of the movie, like the end of the movie, is there.
I thought this was a kid's movie.
Thank you to Dustin and Orlando for, telling us what you guys remember. We're going to go watch the movie now, and I'm really excited to watch it. How about you? All right, well, let's just go watch it anyway.
An innocent discovery. I wouldn't touch that if I were you. A powerful weapon.
I will not, Rocket.
A deadly conspiracy.
They're working for a Nazi agent.
An extraordinary adventure.
Jenny's in trouble.
We've got the girl.
Here it comes!
The rocket will come to us.
We're only gonna get one pass again!
The Rocketeer, rated PG. National sneak preview this Saturday night.
All right, so we just watched The Rocketeer, and I really enjoyed the movie. I was surprised at how well the special effects held up, and I forgot that Joe Johnston directed this movie, and he's directed a lot of movies I really like.
He's right up our alley.
He's already done he did a couple movies that we covered already. So he directed The Pagemaster, he directed one of my favorite movies, Captain America: First Avenger. He did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I didn't realize he did so many movies, actually, because he got his background from like special effects. He worked on the Star Wars movies. He also directed I know he did another movie that we've covered on. Oh, he did Jumanji. So I didn't even realize that, this is a third for him. So I think there's only a few directors we've covered multiple times, Steven Spielberg and now Joe Johnston. So it makes a lot of sense why you got Captain America, a pre-war, World War II Nazi kind of thing. It kind of makes sense.
Right.
What did you think about the movie? Just first impressions.
I thought it was really enjoyable once I could get past the acting of the leads, which
Billy
is
Campbell.
really, yes, Billy Campbell and Jennifer Connelly were terrible in this movie.
She wasn't very good, which surprised me.
Terrible, but everyone else was so enjoyable and so solid. It was odd.
What I think part of it is this movie was Joe Johnston's second movie. So he did Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and then this. So maybe he hadn't figured out how to get a good performance out of, young actors.
I think it was more about the tone of their voice and the line delivery than anything else. Because, their facial expressions, their movement wasn't odd. But if you were to put the exact same dialogue over a cartoon, it would match perfectly.
Yeah, you know what? You're right.
It's very cartoony.
It's kind of like when you say Zac Efron in The Greatest Showman kind of sings like a Disney prince.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. And I think maybe part of that was by design because, this is supposed to be like a 1930s kind of pulp movie.
Well, golly gee.
Yeah, they do say a lot of stuff like that. There were some great one-liners in this movie.
There were.
I mean, we'll get to it as we start going through the movie, but do you want to try to summarize this movie?
No.
Do you want me to try to summarize this movie?
No.
Well, we have to summarize the movie, and one of us should do it.
You go ahead.
All right. So basically, in a nutshell, Billy Campbell plays Cliff Secord, and he's a kind of down on his luck kind of pilot. Him and his buddy Peabody spent their whole life savings building this plane for a race for the Nationals, and they're doing their first kind of flight, and some gangsters stealing a jetpack from Howard Hughes end up shooting down the plane, and then in the emergency landing take out the landing gear of the plane. And so they decide that they're going to try to make a buck off the rocket. And meanwhile, wow, I forgot his name. Timothy Dalton plays Neville Sinclair, this like one of the most famous actors in the world, and he is a Nazi spy, and he's trying to get the rocket pack back. And the whole movie just basically revolves around trying to keep the rocket away from the Nazis.
Pretty much.
Yep.
There's a Zeppelin involved.
There's a Zeppelin. That Zeppelin had a Nazi symbol flying on it across America. That wasn't very low key.
Well, and what hangar were they keeping that in that it, like, inconspicuously suddenly appeared over the crest of Griffith Observatory?
No, they discussed it, that at the beginning of the movie, they mentioned that the Zeppelin was flying across America, so it hit, like, New York, then Chicago, and then somewhere else.
With the Nazi flag the whole time?
I'm thinking that maybe they revealed the Nazi flag right as it's coming up because the Nazis already revealed themselves, maybe? Like, I don't know. It didn't really make sense that it had a Nazi flag flying over it.
Yeah.
Did you know that Neville Sinclair was based off Errol Flynn? Because Errol Flynn was a Nazi?
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, Errol Flynn was a Nazi.
That makes me feel weird inside.
Yeah.
This movie. There's a lot going on here. I'm torn between the two extremes of despising the acting and feeling attacked by it, and simultaneously very much enjoying just how goofy this movie was.
And stylistically, it looked fantastic.
Right. The effects look great. It's beautifully shot. It's a gorgeous film, and yet it has all these things that are at odds with each other.
What's weird about it is I did not expect the jetpack scenes to hold up, and obviously it's green screen, but it still looks better than
except for one.
That one scene at the very end. There's a scene where
Poor Timothy
Dalton's flying the jetpack, and there's a bullet hole in it, so he ignites himself. And
a bullet hole that was safely secured by
chewing gum
before.
Right. Well, that gum actually, I want to talk about the gum because it actually is his lucky charm, and it actually is very lucky.
Maybe we should
movie.
go in order.
So basically, at the beginning of this movie, I mentioned that they're doing the kind of the maiden voyage of this plane that they're going to race, and Cliff puts on some chewing gum on the back of the plane, and Peabody goes, "That's disgusting. This is brand new paint." And he goes, "It's good luck." And he goes, "Gum's never given luck to anybody." Sure enough, that plane crashes. Right? And then later on, he puts gum on the jetpack the first time that he actually flies it, and he does a great job. He saves the day. And then later on, it gets a bullet hole, and they patch it with the gum, and then the gum saves the day because as the jetpack's getting stolen from him, he's able to pull the gum off of it, and then of course it kills the bad guy by blowing up. So the gum was lucky, and Peabody's a jerk for getting rid of his superstitions. Although Peabody is great, played by Alan Arkin.
He was. So the beginning of this film, kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous standards. So the main character is they're test flying their plane that they're trying to get ready for, what do you call it?
A national race.
They're trying to get ready for this race. And as he's coming in for an emergency landing, it goes real wrong in flight.
Yeah.
He's coming in for an emergency landing. Meanwhile, these gangsters are freaking shooting at him.
Right.
He loses a landing gear. He crashes into the fuel truck.
Well, no, he crashes into the car.
Oh, no,
car
they shoot the fuel truck.
No, the car crashes into the fuel truck.
There's a lot happening.
That was planned by the gangster. So the gangster went into the hangar, hid the jetpack under the junkie plane because he thought that it wasn't going to fly, and then grabbed a vacuum, put it in his car, and then drove down the runway and then bailed out and let the car hit the gas tanker or the fuel truck, so that way the FBI would think that the jetpack got destroyed. And then he was going to send the gangsters back to go get the jetpack later.
Right. The issue I'm addressing is this poor dude's coming in basically in an experimental aircraft.
Right.
And it's gone really wrong. He's lucky to be alive thus far. He's lucky that he made it to a runway to come back in for an emergency landing. That doesn't usually happen.
Yeah.
These gangsters are shooting at him. The fuel truck is collateral damage. Not at all his fault. He has no idea why these gangsters are here in the first place. And then the owner of the fuel truck, makes them pay for the fuel truck, and then is a total jerk about it. It's all your fault.
Well, and then the police and the FBI were like, you know what, you can take it up with the government, but good luck with that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I do appreciate, though, that later on in the movie, towards the climax, another fuel truck.
Why are you laughing at the word climax? It wasn't even the climax. It was the first time he puts on the suit and flies it.
Maybe the concept of climax just makes me giggle because it's so foreign.
You know I'm editing that out. That's so mean. You know one thing that I did have a problem with that opening scene when he's flying about to crash?
You saying that.
So one thing that I did have kind of an issue with when he was flying is for no reason the gangsters shoot at him. They're shooting at the cops, and then they see a plane. They're like, oh, let's shoot at that. And they shoot at the plane.
You know who's in that plane.
So the engine is, smoking and oil is getting all over the windshield. And he punches out the windshield.
Right, and his hand is totally fine. Do you have any idea how strong that glass would be?
Also, so this plane is super small. The cockpit, the part that you can actually see is just barely big enough for his head. There's no way he got his arm up there and then had enough leverage to punch through.
He would have had to headbutt it.
He would have had to headbutt it. There's no way. He literally was barely bigger than his Rocketeer helmet. There's no way he got his arm up. But yeah, anyway.
I mean, you've got a little bit of room in those kind of cockpits.
Not enough to punch out safety glass.
Maybe he's got a little baby arm.
No, we see his arms plenty throughout this movie. He punches a bunch of punches a bunch of Nazis. The thing that I forgot about this movie was that monster gangster that they kept calling Frankenstein.
Oh, I know. That was weird and distracting.
I think that was just from... So this
An
movie...
ableist.
I guess. This movie's based off like a graphic novel, and I could be wrong about this, but I think it takes place in like the same world as like Dick Tracy. And Dick Tracy had a bunch of like mutant gangster kind of looking people, so maybe that's what that was. But he
I guess.
breaks a guy in half, and we see it in like a silhouette.
Yeah.
Which
Pretty
is weird.
intense.
And there's a lot of like gratuitous things like that, like seeing somebody get broken in half. There's like a gratuitous like butt shot of the main character. And then there's a gratuitous like boob shot of Jennifer Connelly.
I mean, I don't mind the butt shot or the boob shot.
The boob shot was pretty great. That goes out to our buddy Dustin. But like,
it wasn't even really well done, though.
No, it was
It
super
was like an awkward
pan.
camera. It was that was a tilt.
No, was that a tilt?
It was a bad tilt.
So what they do is they go, we're skipping ahead a little bit, but basically in this scene, Neville Sinclair takes Jennifer Connelly's character Jenny to dinner at this really fancy restaurant, and like the maitre d' or somebody comes up and goes to kiss Neville Sinclair's butt a little bit, and he introduces her, and he goes, "Charmed, doubly charmed," and then the camera tilts down and shows her boobs for like 3 seconds.
No, I thought he was a big time producer.
Oh, was he? I don't know.
I think it was a real person that he was supposed to be playing.
Oh, well, he was somebody, and he says charmed, doubly charmed, and then looks at her boobs, and then the camera tilts down, and her boobs are just there for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
This is a Disney movie.
I mean, if you're gonna have a problem with something in this movie, maybe the physics of the situation would be an issue.
No, they explain the physics.
Okay, so they first find this jetpack, which is where you're first introduced to his amazing acting skills. Because they're trying to create this banter between the two characters, and he's jumping into the plane, and he jumps in all awkwardly, and then jumps up equally as awkwardly and goes, "Ow! What is that?" And he pulls the jetpack out from underneath the airplane seat, which there's no room underneath those airplane seats.
No.
Like,
and
if there is room, there's a fire extinguisher and, like, important equipment. There's no room for a jetpack.
And a giant duffel bag. Like, it was in a giant duffel bag.
Was it? I thought he just kind of pulled it out.
No, he pulled it out, and he goes, "Hey, that's my duffel bag. What's it doing in there?" He's like, "I don't know. Let's see." And he opens it up, and there's a jetpack in there.
Yeah, so he pulls out this jetpack. They're looking at it. It looks dangerous AF.
Dude, it looks rad.
And he's like, I think I'm just gonna push this button. After his buddy's like, "I don't think you should touch that." It flies around the room, which is odd in and of itself that it flies the way it does. It blasts through a wall into the office, but then the chair stops it.
Yeah, that was a little weird. They do explain that the flight pattern doesn't really work on itself, so it got stolen by Howard Hughes.
It needed the rudder.
It needed something, so like several people died trying to get it to work. And then it turns out there was a couple different things. So Peabody...
Maybe employ the basics of aviation when you're making a flying jetpack.
Right. So Peabody, changes something in the chamber and then ends up making a helmet with a rudder, which is rad, not goofy. It's rad. And it was funny because, him and Howard Hughes totally, bro down throughout the movie, talking about aerodynamics and physics and stuff like that.
What's interesting, though, about that scene, that's super awkward, as soon as they decide they're going to go for it, and he's going to, test out this jetpack and put it on, Billy, puts on the whole jetpack, he stands there, PV buckles him in, and they have this, bromance moment where they, look at each other with deep love in their eyes, and it's just really...
It's like a father-son relationship.
Not really.
Also, it's 1939. They can't be openly.
Right. Right. They just, it went on 5 seconds too long, and you're like, wait, am I missing something? Is there a romance? No, it's just bad directing.
I guess. I mean, yeah, it's a segment. But that scene, so basically what happens is because they crashed that first plane and blew up the field truck, they need to go back into their old business of flying a plane dressed as a clown and taking photos. I don't know where the photo aspect comes in. But
because you fly kids around in the plane.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah,
That's super dangerous. That plane barely flew, and they were putting kids in that plane?
I mean, you gotta make a buck.
So...
People sign a waiver. Take
probably
my children.
not back then, but they, I don't know why he's late to the event, so his friend who owns, a diner gets in the plane, and then he's like, "I'm the only one who can fly that plane," that it drifts to the left or something like that, and it's gonna drift into the racetrack. So he gets in the rocket and goes and saves the day. And I was surprised at how good that looked. Like, it was definitely some green screen, but the composition was really good. Like,
yeah, it still holds up. That part does.
it looks better than most TV shows. Like, if you watch like Supergirl on the CW, it still looks better than like
Anything is
that.
better than Supergirl.
And honestly, it looks better than some of the stuff in the movies, and it looks stylized and everything, but it looked great. I really loved it. Like, I don't know how they did it, because he did look like he was like swaying and stuff. They did a fantastic job with
and
that.
we see this a lot with movies that we cover, where if it's a really stylized film, it tends to hold up a lot better.
Yeah,
like, The Mask still looks fantastic, whereas something like Die Hard, granted, they did more practical effects, but stuff like that, like just a pure action film, it's not going to hold up as well.
Right. Although Die Hard,
I think it's all practical.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything.
Well, then use a different example. What's a good example?
Well, crap, I can't think of one right now.
Right, exactly.
Oh, like the Batman Forever.
Well, no, that's really stylized too.
No, but I mean like the opening scene when he's like swinging on the bank vault. It looks really bad and cartoony.
I do appreciate the random one-liners in this film.
Like when he's crashing through the cornfield.
Oh gosh, yeah, well that's good. I'm referring specifically to, "You'd be halfway to Kansas by now, Chowderhead." What? And they come out of nowhere, and they're always like throwaway lines.
Yeah.
So if you're not paying attention, you're gonna miss them completely. At one point when he's flying through this cornfield with, is it the rocket?
Yeah,
he's just
flying.
him with the rocket.
No, it's him.
He's like low flying through a cornfield, and these two farmers are just kind of watching as all the corn flies out of the field. They're like, gophers.
Yeah, whoa, big gopher, or something like that. And then there's something like, there were some good one-liners with him and like Neville Sinclair. Neville Sinclair was quoting a bunch of famous movies, and people kept calling him out for trying to be romantic, but actually quoting just random movies.
Oh my gosh. Well, and just like the one-liners, there are a lot of really great comedic moments that they completely just brush to the side. So when they first start testing the jetpack, they steal a statue.
That's right.
Strap it in. I mean, like, come on, guys. You could have just, like, weighted it with anything. But they steal this statue.
Well, no, it has straps like a backpack. You need a person-shaped thing.
So, whose statue was that?
It was out front of the airport.
Yeah, so someone who contributed greatly to their community and to aviation as a whole probably had their statue jacked so these guys could strap it to an experimental rocket, and then they launch it off into God knows where. It comes back down, and the head is completely gone, and they're like, I think we're gonna need a helmet. And then, like,
right?
Not even like a beat, not even half a
It's
second,
like a
it
hard
just
cut.
cuts straight to something else. So it's hard to tell if this is supposed to be a comedy a lot of the time, because you have all those great moments, but then, you know, it's like they don't really let them land.
Well, then, like, yeah, you're right. There's another scene where Cliff, you keep calling him Billy, that's the actor, but Cliff goes to visit Jenny on a film set and ends up, like, knocking down the entire film set.
What a douche.
And then it just moves on, and the only reason that Jenny gets kind of saved by Neville Sinclair is that he realizes, like, he overhears them talking about the rocket, and so he needs to get closer so he can find the rocket. So there's a point where he tells the gangsters, like, hey, go to the bar or the diner where, like, the pilots hang out, and maybe you can find Cliff. So they go looking for him, and all the patrons of the diner kind of, like, have this understanding, like, we're not going to give up one of our own. So the gangsters are like, where's Cliff? They're like, oh, we haven't seen him. Like, what does he look like? He's like, short little fellow, gimpy leg kind of thing. And then it just moves on. Like,
right.
You're right. Like, I don't think that they had the pacing for that part. They really didn't let things land, but they didn't really have any comedic actors or anybody with a comedic background except for maybe Alan Arkin.
Right. And I think the effect that gives you, rather than making it more intentional, is it just kind of adds on to the awkwardness of some of the acting. So it's kind of like you feel like you're laughing at it without it being intentionally funny.
Right. And maybe they're just trying to do, because like 30s movies have kind of that quick kind of speech pattern where they just talk really fast. Maybe they were trying to emulate that a little bit.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like with just a little bit of re-editing, this could be a much better film.
Right.
In that way. Because just the pacing of letting the jokes land would really add a whole other element to it that is sort of missing right now.
I agree.
Like, when they reveal Timothy Dalton's character, Neville Sinclair, acting in a film, because Jenny is basically doing background on this film, and they reveal him, and they basically have him in Inigo Montoya's wig.
Right.
And it's hilarious. But then, they go through all these motions, and they play out the whole scene, and they get to this one actress's line, which is terrible, and you see his reaction to it, and they call cut. And they don't let that moment land either.
Right.
They've built up this entire great comedic scene in watching how this is going down on the set, and then you move on from it so quickly you don't get a chance to laugh.
Like, they only linger on him for like a quarter of a second.
Right.
And then it just goes. I agree. I think that could have been better, or if somebody in the background laughed or something, like, have somebody other than him react to it. Right,
but on the other hand, I feel like this is a film where you could watch it several times and find new things each time.
So that's absolutely true. So the way we do this show is we record the little bit, hey, what do we remember? And then we go and watch the movie. Katrina actually went out of town, so I watched this movie by myself once, and then she came back into town and we watched it again. So I actually watched this movie twice for the podcast. And I noticed a bunch of different things. I went back through and added a bunch of notes. Like, some of those one-liners I missed. I missed the part where Peavy took the gum off of the first plane. I missed the point where I didn't notice Cliff taking the gum off the rocket at the end, which ultimately is what defeated Neville.
It's a pretty big plot point.
Yeah, I just completely missed. Now, granted, the first time I was watching it, one of my friends was texting me, like, the entire movie. So that's probably why I missed some of this stuff. But it was totally fine watching this movie a second time.
Back to the scene with Neville Sinclair acting in this film with Jenny. So Cliff shows up and knocks down 2 of the set walls. And then, they lay into him like, this is a closed set. How would he have gotten on set in the first place?
And somebody got stabbed.
Somebody got stabbed.
Why are they using real swords?
Well, they used to use real swords.
Really?
Like, dude, some of those Robin Hood movies, like, they were a free-for-all. People broke limbs and
we
stuff.
watched the Errol Flynn one, like 6 months
back
ago.
Back
it was gnarly.
before the Union changed a lot of stuff, like, background actors were very much disposable. Yeah, so that was pretty much spot on that someone could have been stabbed on set.
That's terrible.
But then, like, they play out the scene in a way that we're supposed to feel bad for Cliff, that Jenny is mad at him. Like, dude, you just, like, showed up on set, screwed stuff up, maybe ruined her career,
she got
and we're supposed to feel bad for you?
No, the director said she was banned from that set.
I know,
or from
from the studio.
Yeah, the only reason her career is saved is because Neville Sinclair was actually a bad guy and overheard it. Yeah, my note here is Cliff is an effing idiot. I think I have several notes that say that. Cliff, several. Cliff is not a smart guy. No, he's not.
He's
he
not
just rushes into everything.
particularly likable. He makes way more problems than he solves. If he had just gone to the police in the first place with most of this, like, a lot of this trouble could have been avoided.
Yeah, totally. You're totally right on that.
And who fixes stuff with gum?
They don't normally fix it with gum. It was his good luck charm. And the only thing was he had to go. So he found out that Jenny was with Neville Sinclair at the club that the gangsters own, so he had to go, and then they happened to notice that there was a bullet hole on the rocket.
It doesn't even make sense, because part of the problem with the original schematics of the rockets that they were testing is that they needed a double-insulated chamber to keep it from overheating. If there's a bullet hole in the outside of one of the chambers, you're not going to fix it with gum.
No, you don't understand, honey. So, I don't know if you noticed, we've been to Seattle, we saw that wall with all the gum on the wall.
Oh, God.
Once you take the gum out, it's pliable initially, but then it hardens.
No, but he smears it out of the way with his thumb later on.
He does.
You're a jerk.
It also runs on alcohol. So...
There's a lot.
Yeah, the physics don't really make sense.
There's a lot going on there. I do really like that one-liner when they are initially testing the rocket, and Peavy finishes the helmet and puts it on him. And he says, "How do I look?"
Oh, like a hood ornament.
Like a hood ornament. And then they cut away. Like
Well, it's because they didn't have time to let that one sink in. The plane's about to crash, and he had to go save his friend.
Great.
But no, that was good. Alan Arkin was great in this movie.
Alan Arkin's great in everything.
And they put him in hair.
He's a genuinely nice guy.
You've worked with them, right?
I have.
Good for you.
I love Alan Arkin.
So one of the scenes that I really liked, and I didn't notice this until the second time, I noticed part of it the first time. The second time I noticed some more stuff. So they go to this club, and they're having dinner, and Neville Sinclair's trying to get to know Jenny so he can try to like coax out some stuff about Cliff so he can go get the rocket, right? And there's a lounge singer, which is Jan from The Office, and she looks
amazing.
identical. This is 1991. The Office didn't come out until like 10, 15 years later, and she looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing, singing. She sang on The Office all the damn time. And so that was one thing I noticed the first time. But the second time I noticed, Cliff goes and pretends to be a waiter to try to get Jenny out of there, and like, they're having some back and forth in front of Neville and trying to act like they don't know each other. And he actually does some pretty good cheeky stuff with Neville's like, have you worked here long? He goes, yeah, I've waited on you the last couple of times. But if you look under the waiter outfit, he still has his leather jacket on underneath, poking out. I didn't notice that, which is pretty funny. And then
he's just being the most obvious person on the planet, like messing with the flowers, putting
with the food.
A note in her soup bowl.
Right. And the thing that's weird about that scene is, and it's a fun scene, like he goes and tries to get her out of there, and then the gangsters realize he's there, and so he goes to like a laundry chute and like shoots up through the laundry chute, and the whole thing fills with fire. How did he not?
It's a dumbwaiter.
Is it a dumbwaiter? Well, no, it was in the laundry room because he was hiding in the laundry.
Oh.
So he shoots up, and like the whole chamber fills with fire, and fire blasts out and like knocks the bad guys over. How is he not consumed in flames? Yeah. And then he goes and flies around inside, and so all of a sudden he can kind of like hover and fly vertically and like just hover like a helicopter. Like, I don't know how he did that, but that scene was cool. Like, they're shooting up the restaurant, they like shooting fixtures down, and he ends up seeing like this giant ice sculpture of a snail and like uses his like rocket stuff to propel that, and it knocks down a door so everyone can get out because the gangsters decided to lock everybody in for some reason. But there was some cool little action beats in it. I liked that scene quite a bit.
The end of the movie is solid.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot that happens in a very short period of time, and it
hilarious. Escalates very quickly.
It does.
So basically Jenny gets chloroformed and wakes up in Neville Sinclair's mansion, and she pretends she's into him, knocks him out, and then finds his like Nazi secret room. And then they show up, the Nazis show up, Cliff shows up with the FBI, there's a shootout. And then they end up in the Zeppelin. Like, everything goes wrong.
How did they end up at Griffith Observatory?
Well, no, that's where the meeting was. So they told Cliff to meet them there at 4 a.m. at the Griffith Observatory.
Right.
So he was told to go there. It was prearranged. So in the Zeppelin, he ends up like crashing into the wire that steers the rudder, so they can't steer the Zeppelin anymore.
And I love how they just panic and don't know what to do.
Well, they panic,
like,
and
they have no backup plan for anything.
Yeah, they don't, and they're like, "Don't worry, we have the best Zeppelin pilot in the world."
And he's just screaming.
He's just like, ah! And then, because they got in a fight like with the giant Frankenstein dude, he's tethered to the side, and he swings and breaks open the glass, and then like the pilot just like falls out of falls out.
This entire scene in the Zeppelin at the end plays kind of like they just told the actors the rough outline of what needed to happen, and they improvised it.
Right, it does seem like that. So like one guy, like the pilot just falls out, and then
and they linger on that shot.
The
really
one time they
long
linger on something, and then Cliff like punches another Nazi out, and then like they fight, and then Neville Sinclair shoots a Nazi for calling him out for being incompetent. And then
okay, towards the end of the movie though, there's one scene where they blow up another gas truck, and less than like 5 seconds later he drops the clown into a giant airbag.
That's the first rescue scene.
And then and then there's the thing with the cornfield. So the movie kind of, it's not that it drags, but it's slow, and then they have all these scenes where like a million things happen in the span of about 30 seconds.
Right.
And then so they do that with the first rescue scene, and then at the end of the movie there are like 1,000,001 things that go down.
Flare gun.
And if you're not paying attention, it gets very confusing very quickly. Like, I probably could have rewound this scene and watched it several times and still not known exactly what happened.
Yeah, it was fun though. A lot of random stuff happened. Like, a bunch of Nazis die, a bunch of people get thrown out windows out of the Zeppelin, and then
where does the Zeppelin go at the end?
It blows up. Yeah,
but they just like leave it there.
Well, no, they kind of like have one line to explain. So basically, what happens is
I like that the way that the land part of the Hollywoodland sign got destroyed.
That's right. How did that happen, honey?
It got blown up.
How?
from what's his face
From
crashing
Neville
into-
Sinclair crashed into the land part of the Hollywood land sign, and that's how we got Hollywood.
So I don't know. There might be two people out there in the world who don't know this, but the Hollywood sign used to say Hollywood Land because it was an advertisement for a subdivision, basically,
Yeah.
a housing development. So I think the land part got taken down for something stupid, like just stability or erosion or whatever. But in this movie, they decided that Neville Sinclair
Just destroyed 4 letters.
completely just burst into flames with the rocket pack because a little piece of gum was no longer covering a bullet hole, and then he crashed into the entire land portion of the Hollywood land sign,
Well,
and it exploded.
What's even better is to answer your question, like what happened with the Zeppelin. So, Jennifer Connelly is the one who's like super responsible for bringing it down because she shoots a flare inside the Zeppelin, which causes it to catch fire, and the flare bounces around like crazy.
She's a genius.
So, Cliff and her end up on top, and Frankenstein dude's kind of chasing them, and Howard Hughes and Peabody, aka Peavy, have this like gyrocopter thing and save them. And so then it blows up, and then that's how they explain Neville Sinclair's death, is they say he was out on a night drive, and that the shrapnel from the Zeppelin
And no one
destroyed his
overnight noticed the giant freaking Hollywood land sign on the hillside visible from the entire Los Angeles basin is on fire?
car. I mean, it was 4 a.m.
Okay.
It's 4 a.m.
People notice stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been
Like,
loud.
overnight last year when it turned into Hollyweed, everyone saw that.
Well, I mean,
That was just for the morning drive.
that was great.
That was an amazing moment.
I'm glad that happened.
Yay, legalization.
Um,
So, okay, another note, Cliff is an effing idiot. Howard Hughes swoops in at the end of this movie like a freaking, old-timey Elon Musk superhero. He saves the day, basically. Like, this entire movie would just end badly without him. How does Cliff thank him? He jumps onto one of his glider planes that's mounted on the inside of his hangar and just kind of rides it slowly through the hangar and launches it off into the night.
well, that's because...
He just launched like thousands of dollars
Yeah.
out of this hangar into the
And-
darkness, and everyone just watched it happen. And this was like one of 2 maybe lingering shots in this entire film.
But
You
that
just
was
watch
hilarious.
it slowly happen.
just fade out into the darkness.
And everyone's still happy. Like, Howard Hughes would not have been down with that. The dude peed in jars for years.
Yeah. Well, that was before Howard Hughes saved the day. So Howard Hughes was gonna like let them go and not like sue them, but they weren't gonna let him take the jetpack and go save Jenny. Which realistically, come on, you're not gonna let the Nazis get a jetpack. But I forgot about this subplot, is they wanted to have an entire army of jetpacked people, and they had this really cool, like, now granted, they had this really awesome German propaganda like animated
Yeah, it was
thing,
pretty legit.
which looked rad. But would jetpacked soldiers really be that much better than regular soldiers?
They're
Like,
pretty easy to pick off with a machine gun.
I mean, you would be able to get places faster, but like they're not going to be better in combat. Like once they're down there, like in fact, they're probably more susceptible because they have fuel tanks on their backs.
Right.
I mean, it's a 1930s pulp story kind of thing. I think we've hit all the major stuff. Do you have anything else that you want to? Oh, they give him a free airplane at the end.
They do.
And a pack of gum.
He does not deserve it.
Hey, he saved the world,
Right.
apparently.
I'm good. The last note I had in this was the damn Hollywood land sign.
So, for you said you didn't really remember this movie at all. So this could only have made your childhood better, I guess? Like, what did you think? Did it ruin your childhood?
It did not, but it reaffirmed my faith in my parents' taste in movies because we only watched this once.
I loved it. I watched it twice. I saw it on Blu-ray the other day for like $9, but I know I've seen it for like $5 before. I'm buying this movie the next time it goes on sale
It's
again.
very entertaining.
It's hokey at parts, but I think it's super entertaining. I
The
had
entire
really
thing
fun.
is hokey. It's enjoyable.
I really want to dress up as him for Halloween.
Yeah, that should happen.
It would be a cool costume. My childhood not ruined by a long shot. Like, I actually regret not watching this before. I've wanted to watch it for years, and it's great. This will probably become like a Point Break kind of movie for me where I watch it all the time.
Yeah, I think it's definitely in that vein. If you approach it with the expectation of Indiana Jones, it's solid.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really made me want to watch Dick Tracy, which I don't want to watch that right now. It's too similar, but I definitely want to cover that on the podcast eventually.
Eventually.
So, Katrina, what are we going to be watching on our next episode?
Well, Michael, I've decided we should watch Land Before Time.
Ooh. I definitely want to watch that. That sounds great. So,
Part 1 of 20.
Part 1 of 20. I had like the first 10 of them, I think, growing up. Because, well, I mean, I had a bunch of younger siblings. But tell us what you guys remember about that movie. Tweet us, comment on Instagram, Facebook, send us an email at mdxpods@gmail.com. But let us know what you guys remember about The Land Before Time or Land Before Time. We're not sure if there's a "the" on there or not. So we'll figure that out and get back to you. So, Katrina, where can our listeners find you?
I'm all over the internet at Katrinaosity.
Check it out. She's on YouTube. She makes some really cool videos and blogs. You can check out everything that's MDXpods related at mdxpods.com, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Also, we are doing a giveaway for our new YouTube channel. So, all you got to do is subscribe, like a video, and comment on a video, and you're automatically entered to win a gift pack of MDXpod stuff. So you'll get an autographed movie from Remake Rewind, a movie that we covered. You'll get an autographed movie from Ruin My Childhood, and you're going to get a bunch of Dustin's artwork. So if any of that sounds good, just go to our YouTube, subscribe, like, and comment on a video, and you'll be automatically entered. We're going to be doing this until a week after this episode airs, so I believe that is the 3rd. So 11:59 p.m. on August 3rd is going to be the deadline.
2018.
2018. Just get back to us by August 3rd, 11:59 p.m., and you'll be automatically entered to win. Other than that, thank you guys for listening.
Bye.
Bye.